The officer didn't even finish his sentence before my hand started shaking. "Ms. Hale, we've recovered 2 unattended children. They say you're their aunt." I froze. Because I had said no. I wasn't available to babysit. I'd been clear, firm, done being the family's backup plan. But my sister sent Lily and Theo in a taxi to my address anyway, except the driver got the wrong side of the city. By the time I reached the precinct, both kids were trembling, mascara streaked, clutching each other like the world had ended. And 3 days later, something far worse happened. My name is Juniper Hale, and for most of my life, I was groomed to be the one who made things easier for everyone else. In our family, Serena, the older sister, was the sun. Everything revolved around her. She got the bright upstairs bedroom. I got the damp corner room downstairs. She got private tutors. My scholarship fund mysteriously went toward her college needs. And every time I asked why my mother Eleanor would sigh like I was being dramatic, families sacrificed Juniper. Be understanding. Understanding became my whole personality. It didn't matter that I built a life of my own in the city, working as a financial analyst, keeping a small apartment on a quiet street near the river, building routines that made sense to me. In my family's eyes, I was still the one who should bend. The only exception, the only part of my family that ever felt uncomplicated was Lily and Theo. They were Serena's kids, but somehow they became mine in all the ways that mattered. Lily with her quiet, too-old eyes. Theo with the way he clung to my hand like he trusted me more than gravity. Whenever they visited, I would kneel to their level tie, shoelaces, warm soup, read stories. They looked at me the way no one else in my family ever had, like I was safe. Maybe that's why it hurt so much watching Serena treat them like accessories to her lifestyle, dropping them off last minute, so she could disappear to a spa weekend or a wine tasting. She'd text me with an hour's notice, sometimes less. "Be a good aunt. Don't make this complicated. You know Mark's busy." And most of the time I rearranged everything, canceled dinners, postponed errands, stayed awake late to finish work after they fell asleep. But this year, something in me shifted. The exhaustion wasn't just physical anymore. It was a kind of emotional erosion. I was tired of being needed only when it was convenient for someone else. So when Serena called on a Thursday afternoon, while I was in the middle of prepping for a conference I'd been planning for months, I said no. Calmly, rationally, like an adult. "Find another sitter, Serena. I'm not available this weekend." There was a full second of silence on her end before she hissed, "You're selfish." You know that? Then she hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't chase after her. I didn't apologize. I didn't soften the boundary. And yet through that strange quiet afterward, something unsettled crawled inside me. I couldn't name it, but it sat at the base of my spine like a warning. In my family, no was never an answer Serena accepted. She heard it as a challenge, an insult. I just didn't know how far she'd go to prove she still had control. The weekend arrived colder than expected, the kind of crisp morning where the city feels half awake wrapped in a thin layer of fog. I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and reviewed my slides for the conference. It should have been a normal Saturday, quiet, purposeful mine. At least that's what I thought. Across town, Serena was packing for her weekend getaway. I wouldn't know the details until much later, but I can picture it now, her tossing dresses into a suitcase, rushing through the house, while Lily hovered in the hallway, clutching her backpack. "Are we going to Aunt June's?" Lily asked. Serena barely looked at her. "Yes, she'll be there." "But," she said, "get in the car, Lily." Theo, still half asleep, tugged his dinosaur plush against his chest as Serena ushered them into a taxi. She scribbled my street name on a folded piece of paper, just the name, nothing else. No building number, no cross street, no indication it was the west side of the city, not the east. To her, it probably didn't matter. I always caught the pieces she dropped. She assumed I always would. Back in my apartment, I didn't hear from her. Not a text, not a call, nothing that hinted she'd done something irreversible. I slipped on a blazer, checked the time, and rehearsed a few talking points in my head. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something nudged me. I answered. "Ms. Hale." "Yes, this is Officer Blake. We're calling from a precinct near the river. We have 2 children here, Lily and Theo. They say you're their aunt." My mug slipped. Coffee splashed everywhere. What do you mean you have them? They're supposed to be home." They were dropped off by a taxi at a building on Riverside. Wrong building. They were found alone, upset. A neighbor contacted us. I couldn't hear the rest over the pounding in my ears. I grabbed my keys, barely remembering to lock the door. The taxi ride felt endless. Every red light was a punishment. Every turn made my lungs tighter. All I could think was, they're alone. They're scared. She did this to them. She did this because of me. When I reached the station, the world tunneled. A small room, buzzing fluorescent lights, gray walls, and two tiny figures huddled on a bench. Lily's face was streaked with tears. Theo's hands shook as he clung to his dinosaur. When they saw me, both shot up and ran into my arms. Their bodies were trembling so violently it rattled my bones. Aunt June Lily cried, burying her face in my shoulder. We didn't know where to go. The building didn't have your door. Theo hiccuped. The driver left. I wrapped them both in my coat, heart, splitting in ways I didn't know it could. Officer Blake stepped forward with a clipboard. They were found on a sidewalk for at least 20 minutes before the neighbor intervened. This situation may qualify as child endangerment. We'll need your statement. My phone buzzed Serena calling. I didn't answer. When it buzzed again, Officer Blake nodded. You should take that. I put it on speaker. Serena's voice exploded through the room. Where are my kids? The taxi driver said he dropped them off hours ago. My throat burned. Serena, you wrote the wrong address. You sent them to the wrong side of the city. A beat of stunned silence. What no? You were supposed to be there. This is your fault, Juniper officer. Blake held out his hand. I passed him the phone without hesitation. Mrs. Brennan, he said firmly, your children were abandoned on a public sidewalk. You need to return immediately. This incident is being documented. Her voice rose. Rage, denial, panic before the officer ended the call. I looked down at Lily and Theo clutching me like they were trying to anchor themselves back into safety. And in that moment, something inside me settled, a line drawn cleanly. If I stayed silent now, I would be part of the danger. Everything that came after CPS reports hearings, family implosions started with that realization. And it would only get worse from here. The next 48 hours felt like living inside a storm cloud, low pressure, no air, everything humming with a quiet, constant threat. Ms. Caldwell from CPS called first. Her voice was calm, practiced, the kind of tone that only comes from years of watching families unravel. We're opening an assessment regarding Lily and Theo, she said. We'll need to interview you, their father, and their mother. I agreed immediately. There was nothing to hide. Mark called next. I expected anger, maybe bitterness. He'd always believed Serena's stories about me. Instead, his voice was tight, horrified. She told me you confirmed you could watch them. She said everything was arranged. I told her no, Mark. Clearly, repeatedly. A long silence. Then we're coming back to the city. I want to see the police report. While Mark booked the earliest flight home, my family turned on me like it was choreographed. Eleanor called her voice sharp enough to cut glass. How could you do this to your sister, CPS police? Do you want to destroy her? She sent her children alone in a taxi to the wrong side of the city, I said quietly. This isn't about her. It's about them. Don't twist it. You've always been jealous of Serena. You finally found your chance. I hung up before the old instinct to defend myself could come back. Aunt Marion left a voicemail. Next family handles family matters inside the family. But this wasn't a family matter. This was child safety. And the line between those things had snapped the moment Lily and Theo were found crying on a sidewalk. By Sunday evening, the narrative against me was already spreading through relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Bitter, single, jealous, dramatic. I'd been called all of those before, but this time they didn't land. I knew exactly who I was protecting. When Mark arrived at my apartment that night, he looked shaken. I saw the report, he said, and the statements. Juniper, thank you. They could have been hurt. Or worse. He asked for my help gathering texts, timestamps, call histories. Every message from Serena demanding childcare with no notice. Every screenshot where I said no. Every time she tried to guilt me anyway. This isn't a one-time mistake, he said quietly. It's a pattern. Monday morning, Ms. Foster Mark's attorney called me in for a meeting. She was composed, razor-sharp, and frighteningly efficient. We'll be requesting temporary custody, she said. Your testimony is crucial. This case will move quickly. My stomach twisted not from fear, but from the realization of what that meant. Serena would come for me. Eleanor would tear me apart. The family would split straight down the middle. Ms. Foster seemed to read my hesitation. You're not doing this to your sister, she said softly. You're doing this for those children. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I finally allowed myself to feel the quiet collapse of a lifetime role. Dutiful daughter, agreeable sister, the one who patched holes and smoothed things over. That Juniper was gone. And in her place stood someone who would not look away again. The real fight was only beginning. 3 days after the police found Lily and Theo, my phone rang again, this time from Ms. Foster. Her voice carried the sharpness of a blade. "Juniper, the petition is filed. Mark is seeking emergency custody. Serena will be served today." The call that destroyed her. That's what I would later call it. Because the moment Serena realized this wasn't a family argument, this was the law, her entire world collapsed. Serena called me 30 seconds later, voice jagged and feral. "How dare you? How dare you do this to me, June?" "You did this to yourself," I said, forcing my tone level. "I left them with a driver." "People do that all the time. You left them on the wrong side of the city, alone, crying. You're dramatic. This is your fault if you'd watched them." "No," I cut in. "If you had acted like a mother, none of this would have happened." She screamed until the line went dead. Ms. Foster called back. "Don't engage with her anymore. Everything goes through legal channels now." And just like that, the real battle began. The courthouse felt colder than the outside air, echoing floors, high ceilings, polished wood that looked too clean for the kind of broken families walking through its doors. Mark sat beside his attorney, shoulders set. I sat behind them, hands clenched so tightly the bones ached. Serena walked in last. She looked perfect. Hair curled, makeup soft outfit coordinated to project gentle motherhood. She clutched a tissue dramatically in one hand. Her attorney put a protective palm on her shoulder. A performance, a well-rehearsed one. When the hearing began, Serena's attorney stepped forward first. "Your Honor, my client is a devoted mother who made a single mistake under extraordinary stress. This entire situation is being grossly exaggerated by a bitter, childless sister with a long history of jealousy." I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I didn't react. Facts would speak. He continued. "Mrs. Brennan volunteers at the children's school. She attends activities. She has been the primary caregiver their whole lives." Ms. Foster stood next, expression cool and unbothered. "Your Honor, we have law enforcement reports, CPS documentation, eyewitness statements, and a pattern of neglect extending far beyond this incident." Judge Keaton turned to the witness stand. "Call your first witness." Officer Blake stepped up. He testified plainly. The taxi left the children on a sidewalk for at least 20 minutes. The written address was incomplete and inaccurate. The building had no such apartment. The children were distressed, cold, and confused. The courtroom shifted. Serena stared straight ahead, jaw tightening. Next came Ms. Caldwell from CPS. Her report was devastating. Prior incidents of Serena failing to pick the children up on time. A previous call from a school about Theo wandering near a busy street. Notes about Lily expressing fear of being left again. Observations of Serena prioritizing personal activities over supervision. Serena's shoulders curled inward. Ms. Foster stood. "We now call Ms. Juniper Hale." My pulse pounded as I approached the stand. I took the oath, sat, and folded my hands carefully in my lap. "Ms. Hale." Ms. Foster began, "Did you agree to babysit on the day of the incident?" "Num." "Did you clearly communicate that to Mrs. Brennan?" "Yes." "Multiple times. Were you aware she still intended to send the children to you?" "No." "I had absolutely no idea." Serena's attorney rose for cross. His smirk was a knife. "Miss Hale, isn't it true you've always resented your sister?" "No." "You're jealous of her life, her family, her success?" "No." He paced slowly. "You've watched these children dozens of times, correct?" "Yes. And this time you chose work over family. I chose safety over enabling dangerous behavior." I said, "There's a difference." Foster didn't smile, but the corners of her eyes softened with approval. When I stepped down, Serena stared at me with pure venom. Then it was her turn to testify. She cried almost instantly. "I thought they were going to my sister's home. I didn't mean for anything bad to happen. I wrote the address fast. I had no idea the driver would get confused." Ms. Foster's cross was merciless, but calm. "Mrs. Brennan, is it true you didn't confirm your sister would be home, I assumed? Is it true you left the children without verifying? The building had the apartment you wrote." "I was in a hurry." "And is it true this is not the first time you failed to supervise the children properly?" "That's exaggerated. It's documented." The room went silent. Judge Keaton leaned forward, expression carved from stone. "This is not a single lapse. This is a pattern of disregard for child safety." Serena's face crumpled. Mark reached back slightly, brushing his hand against mine for a second, a silent thank you, a shared grief for what this had come to. The judge continued, voice absolute. "Primary physical custody will be awarded to Mr. Brennan. Mrs. Brennan's visitation will be supervised until she completes parenting courses, individual therapy, and demonstrates sustained behavioral change. Serena let out a sound between a gasp and a sob. When court adjourned, she stormed down the hallway toward me. "You ruined my life," she hissed. I looked at her calmly. "You nearly ruined theirs." Her face twisted, but she had no words left. For the first time, Serena realized she couldn't spin this into a story where she was the victim. And I realized the same thing. I wasn't the family's shadow anymore. I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the one who swallowed every injustice. I was the one who finally protected Lily and Theo in a way no one ever protected me. And nothing would ever be the same. Life didn't calm down overnight, but the air around all of us finally felt breathable. Mark set up a structured routine at his apartment, homework charts on the fridge, regular dinners, early bedtimes. Lily's nightmares stopped after a few weeks. Theo started sleeping without the hallway light on. Helen and George welcomed me into their home like I'd always been family, thanking me in ways that made my throat ache. Even my boss, Ms. Ramirez, pulled me aside one morning. "Take whatever time you need," she said. "You protected those kids. That matters." Serena attended her supervised visits, usually distracted, usually defensive. Therapy notes said she was present physically, detached, emotionally. I stopped waiting for her to change. I had lost the version of a family I once begged for, but I gained something steadier, a chosen family built on respect, boundaries, and safety. And watching Lily and Theo finally exhale, it made every battle worth it. Looking back, everything shifted the moment I said no. Serena sent the kids in a taxi, the driver got the wrong side of the city, and 3 days later came the call that unraveled her story completely. But protecting Lily and Theo was worth every fracture that followed. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts below and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.